Hey, what's up, guys, and welcome to Gamescript. We are looking at the Pittsburgh Steelers versus the Indianapolis Colts. We got a 42.5-point total with Pittsburgh as 1.5-point dogs. And there is a pretty straightforward way to get different in this game. And I'll get into that right after this.
There is a ton of value in current underdog playoff best ball ADP. Elite offenses like the Bills are easy to stack. Take advantage of uncertainty and start drafting now. Use the promo code SEEK for up to a $100 match on your first deposit. And subscribe to Heat Seeker Sports on YouTube for underdog strategy and drafting shows.
That's right. Welcome to Gamescript. This is a show where I cover DraftKings Showdown. And this particular episode is going to be focused on Pittsburgh versus Indianapolis. We're looking at a 42.5-point total with Pittsburgh as 1.5-point dogs. And honestly, I don't really see Pittsburgh as maybe losing this game. I think I see Pittsburgh as winning this game, although I do think it's going to be a close game. But there will be a way that we can get different, and I'll dive into that in a second. And for this show, give me a like on the video. I'm looking for 15 likes in order to put out a shorter video later on with my favorite picks of this game when I have more information. And give me a subscribe on the YouTube page. I'm almost at 300 subscribers. I'm about 80 subscribers off from that. So help me out there with a subscribe on the YouTube channel. And you'll want to subscribe anyways, because this is when I put out those shorter videos, you're going to want to sign up for alerts. And when you get those alerts, when I put those videos up, it's usually pretty close to game time. So you want to sign up for the alerts to make sure that you're getting a notification when that video is posted. But also you're going to want alerts because I'm going to be putting out a ton of best ball playoff content coming up with Underdog. I have a lot of experience with playoff best ball, and it's probably my best game apart from Showdown, and it's one of the games that I've had the most success with, and I'm looking forward to doing that content. There's a lot of value right now on Underdog, and especially with the current situation with playoffs, there's so many teams that are on the bubble right now. So many good teams are on the bubble right now. So that's presenting a situation that I've never seen with playoff best ball, where there's a ton of value on some teams that at the beginning of the season were Super Bowl favorites, like the Bills, like that promo that you saw at the top. And if you use the promo code SEEK, you're going to get a $100 match on your first deposit on Underdog. That's up to $100 of a match. So make sure that you're signing up using the promo code SEEK, and you'll get that deposit bonus. But for now, let's get into this matchup. Like I said, I don't think it's going to be a game where the Colts necessarily win, but I do see the Steelers potentially taking this game. It's an interesting matchup. I don't necessarily like either team, so it's really going to kind of be a lean based on ownership, and just kind of taking a look at what the optimizers are doing for lineups. If we look at the team stacks, I'm seeing right now, and this is very preliminary, and this is based off of just Roto-Grinders projections and everything, but I am seeing 4-2 builds in favor of Indy, way more than 4-2 builds in favor of Pittsburgh. It's a 39-3 as far as percentage, and 39% 4-2 builds in favor of Indianapolis. And I'm not sure I believe those necessarily, but that's a heavy lean towards the Indy side. For a game with a 1.5-point spread, it seems like a lot. So when we're building these lineups, we'll be conscious of that, and there will be a way to get different. At the captain, I also see for ownership projections in the captain spot. Right now, I'm seeing Zack Moss as the highest owned captain. looking at a 25% captain ownership, and Michael Pittman is right behind him. So those two guys are taking up 50% of the ownership, basically. And so there's going to be plenty of opportunity to pick a captain pivoting off of those two, because there are guys that have better matchups, and I'll get into that here as I'm going through this player pool. Now, I'm going to start things off with Pittman. I do think that he has the potential to be the highest raw point scorer on the slate, and that's based on the amount of targets that he's been getting. And look at it, the amount of targets he's been getting. It's been like crazy. He's gotten 11 targets last week, 16 the week before that, 13 the week before that, 12 the week before that, and then he has another 13 and 14 in there. He is clearly Gardner Minshew's favorite target, and he has been benefiting from it. And he's been putting up decent points too. 20 DraftKings points last week, 31 the week before that, 24 the week before that. So decent weeks for DraftKings. But you think with that many targets, he'd have a lot more games over 20 DraftKings points. I'm only seeing 3 games over 20 DraftKings, 4 games over 20 DraftKings points for Michael Pittman. And that's not nearly as many as I would expect, given the amount of targets that he has. So that right there puts in question his captain ownership, although he does still have the highest likelihood of being the projected raw points leader on this slate. But as far as what I'm seeing right now for wideouts against Pittsburgh, they're only putting up 7.2 DraftKings points a game, and that's over the last since week 6. I'm taking out the first 6 weeks of the season, just based on, I want to get the most recent performance of these defenses. And Pittsburgh's been much better over the second half of the season. They were pretty susceptible during the first half of the season. They were a defense that we were targeting for several weeks there, but now they have kind of shored up, and they are pretty strong against the quarterback position. They're only allowing 14.2 DraftKings points since week 6, and 7.2 points, as I said, to wideouts. So that is not a good matchup for Michael Pittman. Let's take a look at who they've faced since week 6. Just to get a better idea of what we're dealing with here. Since week 6, the Indianapolis Colts have faced the Jacksonville Jaguars, and they held Christian Kirk was the best scoring wide receiver in that matchup. He only scored 14 DraftKings points. If we look at week 7, they played the Cleveland Browns, and none of those wide receivers scored over 10 DraftKings points. If we look at week 8, Rashid Shaheed is the only guy that's put up points, and he put up 27 DraftKings points. So that was a pretty big week by Rashid Shaheed. Week 9, no real points scored by the wide receivers. If we look at week 10, Demario Douglas scored 14 DraftKings points. Week 12, Mike Evans put up 25 DraftKings points. Week 13, we have 19 DraftKings points by DeAndre Hopkins. And then week 14, we have against Cincinnati, no one on Cincinnati put up many DraftKings points for receivers. So they faced some pretty high-powered offenses in there. Apart from DeAndre Hopkins and Mike Evans, there really wasn't any standout wide receiver performances apart from, like Rashid Shaheed. So, I mean, they have given up big games, but it hasn't been very many big games to wide receivers. Usually you'll see at least one wide receiver that scored, like 14 plus DraftKings points in a game versus these defenses, but you're not seeing that against this Indianapolis defense. As far as Pittsburgh's defense, let's take a look at Pittsburgh, because that's what we want to see for Michael Pittman. Since week 6, Los Angeles Rams, they gave up 26.4 DraftKings points to Puka Nacua. They gave up just 14 DraftKings points to Calvin Ridley. They gave up 10 DraftKings points to DeAndre Hopkins. Let's see. They gave up 19 to Jaden Reed and 12 to Romeo Doubs. And they gave up 12 to Elijah Moore in week 11. That was against the Browns. Against the Bengals, they did not give up very many wide receiver DraftKings points at all. In fact, no wide receiver scored more than 8 DraftKings points against them. And then same against the Arizona Cardinals in week 13. And then week 14 against the Patriots, they only gave up 13 to Juju. So yeah, Pittsburgh, the same story as Indy. So they basically we're looking at two teams that have not given up a whole lot of points to these wideouts. Now, so if we're considering the captain position here, that might be an over ownership on Michael Pittman if he's going to be 25% owned. On the other side, maybe Pittsburgh's Indy's giving up a few more points, a few more DraftKings points per game to those wideouts since week 6. They're giving up 13 DraftKings points a game. So that puts Diontae Johnson in a little bit better position than we're seeing on the Pittsburgh side. Sorry, I'm just looking up to double check something here. Yeah, 7.2 allowed by Pittsburgh, and the Colts are allowing 13 DraftKings points a game to the wideout since week 6. So Diontae Johnson has a little bit of a better matchup than Michael Pittman. Let's look at Diontae Johnson recently. Diontae Johnson, 14.7 DraftKings points last week, 13 DraftKings points against Arizona. As far as targets with Mitch Trubisky, he's gotten 7 and 5 these last couple weeks. He got 8 targets against Cincy, 8 targets against Cleveland. So he's been a big part of the game plan since his return from injury. And George Pickens is the other receiver that we would be looking at on that Pittsburgh side. And he has not done much of anything recently. He's been getting the targets, 6 targets last week, 5 targets the week before that, 5 targets the week before that, and 6 targets the week before that. But George Pickens has not done anything from a DraftKings point perspective. He has those few weeks early in the season where it looked like he was breaking out a little bit, and then he just completely crashed and burned. I don't know if it's maybe like a conscious decision by the coaching staff. He's had moments where he might have pissed off Mike Tomlin with his attitude or something like that. But George Pickens is a talented guy, and they're going to need to start getting him the ball. I do believe that the coaches were talking about that this week, making a point to say that they need to get the ball to George Pickens more. And we know the upside with George Pickens, and he's going to be low owned. And these are the guys that I like to target in the captain spot, guys that I know have the upside that Pickens has. Like I said, like 30 DraftKings points against Baltimore, 19 DraftKings points against the Rams, 26 DraftKings points against Cleveland. That's why you see when we have these Steelers on these shows, and I'm talking about George Pickens in the captain, even though we haven't seen much out of him recently. There's a reason for that, talking him up as the captain. It's just because he has the upside. And if we get one of those games where he scores 19 points or 30 DraftKings points and he ends up in the captain spot, we can get him at a relatively low ownership. And the ownership on captain, I only have one source for ownership, and that's RotoGrinders right now. And RotoGrinders, I'm seeing Pickens at a 5% captain ownership. I think that's pretty much in line where I would expect him to be. I would expect him to be around like that 5-6 range for captain ownership. Where I am surprised at captain ownership is where I'm seeing Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren. I'm seeing Najee at 9%, and I'm seeing Jaylen Warren at 4%. And that is really surprising to me, given that since week 6, Indy has been one of the worst run defenses in the league. They're giving up 32 DraftKings points a game to running backs. And Pittsburgh is a team that wants to run the ball, especially with Mitch Trubisky as the quarterback. They want to put the game in his hands as little as possible with the mistakes that he makes. We saw last week he was getting booed the entire game, Mitch Trubisky, and like he was just living up to those boos. And he ended up getting there from a fantasy standpoint. He got 21.6 DraftKings points. He ended up getting a rushing touchdown and putting up 30 rushing yards. But Trubisky is not the quarterback that you want to have managing your game. And yeah, he was getting booed at home. And you could tell the Pittsburgh fans were just like fed up with the season. Pittsburgh, in fact, is on the verge probably of being eliminated from the playoffs. But, like Tomlin has a way of, like just rallying his team. His crappy teams, like right before the playoffs. And honestly, like the Pittsburgh fans are just tired of making it to the playoffs with these crappy teams. A friend of mine is a big Pittsburgh fan, and he's just like, he wants Tomlin out. He wants the Steelers to get a decent draft pick. He's tired of getting into the playoffs with these teams that are going to get eliminated in the first round, like Pittsburgh's been doing for the last few years. And this year they seem to be on that same trajectory. So Mitch Trubisky is, he's got upside with the rushing. He is not in a good matchup though, because like I said, Indy and Pittsburgh are giving up, their defenses are giving up the exact same DraftKings points per game since week 6. Are both giving up 14.2 DraftKings points a game. So neither quarterback has a very good matchup in this game. So we'll take a look beyond that. If we're looking at our next guy up, Gardner Minshew, actually Zack Moss. Zack Moss is another high-owned guy, and what has he done lately? He's only scored, didn't even crack 10 DraftKings points last week, 8 DraftKings points the week before that, 9 the week before that. He went on that tear in the beginning of the season, and I think he's been coasting on that as far as popularity ever since, because people seem to have not been paying attention to him since week 8. If he's got, the second highest projected ownership as a captain in this matchup. And as far as what the Steelers are giving up for running backs, you're giving up 22.7 DraftKings points a game. Steelers, again, with this defense, this is a situation where they were giving up a lot more DraftKings points early in the season when Cam Hayward went out. Cam Hayward has been back, but they're still giving up a decent amount of running back points with 22.7. That's like a middling range. But compared to what Indy's giving up in 31.7 DraftKings points, I will take the Pittsburgh running backs over that Zack Moss running back like every day. So that is a really good situation for the Pittsburgh backs and a middling situation for Zack Moss. And it doesn't justify a 25% projected ownership. If we're looking for other good matchups on this game, the Indy tight ends have a good matchup with Pittsburgh giving up 14.6. And again, it's almost identical because Indy's giving up 14.9 DraftKings points to the tight end position, which makes Freiermuth interesting. Freiermuth has had a very sluggish season. He has not had many big weeks at all. He had 24 DraftKings points against Cincy, and he had 13 against Vegas, but those are the only weeks that he's done anything. But I do like Freiermuth in this matchup just based on what the kind of points the Colts are giving up to tight end. So we're able to narrow down this player pool decent amount just by looking at the points allowed by the defenses. So Diontae Johnson, again, a guy that I kind of like based on his targets and his matchup. Pickens, a guy I like because of his upside. Jaylen Warren is a guy I like as a captain option just because of his ownership. We take a look at what he's done recently. Did not do anything these past 3 weeks against New England, Arizona, and Cincy, but now he faces a super easy run defense. The last easy run defense that he faced, Green Bay, he scored 22 DraftKings points. So let's see. Let me check and see what kind of points New England, Arizona, and Cincinnati are giving up to the running back position. Let's see. Cincinnati is giving up 22.1 points to the running back position. Let's see what Arizona is giving up here. Arizona is giving up 29 points a game to the running back position, and New England is giving up. What is New England giving up? I'm trying to find the Patriots are giving up only 17 DraftKings points a game. So Arizona and Cincy were easy matchups, and he only scored 6.5 points and 8.2 points against them. But the weeks before that, he had 27 points against Cleveland, 22 against Green Bay, and 14 against Tennessee. So Jaylen Warren is completely capable of putting up DraftKings points, and he has an easy matchup, one of the best matchups that you can have this week. Najee Harris in those previous 3 weeks, he had a big game against Cincy. He only had 10 versus Arizona and then 8 versus New England. So before that, Najee had a little string of double-digit points there, and he had one other week. So he's been doing all right this year, but he's another guy that's being overlooked in this captain spot this week with the matchup, considering that the Colts are so bad against the running backs. So that's kind of a lean that I'm going on the captain spot this week, just based on what I'm seeing, based strictly on ownership projections. That's going to kind of be how I develop my game script. I'm going to look at the ownership projections on these running backs and on like Pickens and Diontae Johnson, and I'm going to kind of go with those as my lean on the way that I want to build my game scripts. Let's see. So we got Josh Downs has not done much of anything recently. He has not had a double-digit point week since week 8. Let's see what the slots are doing against Pittsburgh. Slot receivers have a way better matchup than the wideouts. Slot receivers are getting 19.1 DraftKings points a game against the Steelers, and that sets up Josh Downs for a potentially under-owned situation. Josh Downs, showed some upside earlier in the season. Like I said, he is only $6,200 in salary. Josh Downs is a guy I would keep in my player pool and potential candidate to score more points than he's being projected for. Week 12 was the last week he had a big week from targets. He had 13 targets in week 12, but he only had 9 DraftKings points. So he's a guy that gets the opportunity. He has not had a big week in recent weeks, but he's had big weeks in the past, and he's got upside. So he is a guy that we want in our player pool. And we look down a little bit past these quarterbacks. Freiermuth is a guy I talked about. I like his matchup, and he hasn't done much either. Boswell, I like the kickers this week. The defenses, I think I like. I do like the defenses this week too, because the Steelers have good edge rushers, and they're facing a mistake-prone Gardner Minshew, and then the Colts against the Steelers, they got Mitch Trubisky. So both these defenses are in play, and they are relatively cheap compared to what we've seen defenses at recently on these slates 4,800 and 4,400 for those defenses. Alec Pierce, he's kind of a perennially overrated guy. He has had one big week this season. He scored 22 DraftKings points against Tennessee. But for the most part, I hear a lot of analysts talking this guy up, and I've never really seen him produce, except for like a few flashes. But I don't necessarily like him in this Pittsburgh matchup, especially with Pittsburgh only giving up 7 DraftKings points a game to wideouts. I would much rather focus my attention on Michael Pittman if I'm going anywhere, or Josh Downs. So we go beyond Alec Pierce, Kyle and Granson. Like these tight ends have a good matchup this week, but they haven't really done anything. But you can see this happen, when these tight ends haven't done anything, but then they get in a good matchup, and then all of a sudden, they're putting up a 10-point week. I would keep Kyle and Granson in my player pool. And for these other tight ends on Indy, I would keep them in my player pool too, and put a rule not more than one Indy tight end. You see that Mo Alley Cox has had a 10-point week back in week 4. He's only 2,400 in salary. So, if you get to a point where you need 2,400, then you see this tight end in Mo Alley Cox with a good matchup. Like, that is the only spot that I play Mo Alley Cox. Isaiah McKenzie, another slot receiver, has not done anything this year. And he hasn't done anything, and Josh Downs is the main slot receiver. So Isaiah McKenzie has kind of been left in the dust. Other than that, I'm not really seeing too much in these low salary ranges. So we can start building a lineup here. I'll click the optimizer. Let's get the chalky build out of the way first. Optimizer likes Zach Moss and the captain. I just don't I don't see it. They like, let's see, Freiermuth, Harris, Minshew, and Pittman. So they're going Pittman, Minshew, Freiermuth, and Harris. That leaves us with 1,600. You can use your imagination there. They have a lean towards, like one of those indie tight ends. But I'm just not seeing it. I'm not gonna waste a spot on Mallory here. What has Mallory done? He got 5 targets last week, 4 targets the week before that. So 9.6 points and 2.4 points. If he's going to be the guy getting the majority of these targets, let's compare him to these other guys. Will Mallory getting a decent amount of targets. Let's look at Ogletree. 2 targets, 1 target, 3 targets, 3 targets. So not really that much there. If they were committed to one of these tight ends, it would make it so much easier. Mo Alley Cox is overpriced given the opportunities that he's been getting, especially when you got a tight end that's in Mallory that's been getting more targets. Kylan Granson, 4 targets and 3 targets. Mallory's been getting, looks like the most consistent as far as targets, and he is one of the lower priced tight ends. So that's why the optimizer is trying to put him in the lineup. Will Mallory, maybe a guy to keep in your player pool. If you get down to that point where, you have, 3,600 in salary left, you want to put in one of these tight ends for Indy, I would just use that as an opportunity just to rotate one of each of these guys in. I do one version of my lineup with Granson, one version with Cox, and one version with Mallory. So that's one way to cover all your bases with those tight ends, knowing that it's a committee situation there. So I want to clear this out. I want to go in a different direction with this build. I want to say that it's a 1.5 point spread. There's really no reason to have 4-2 builds in Indy's favor. So let's try to do a 4-2 build with the Pittsburgh favor. Let's go with Jaylen Warren. We'll do a Jaylen Warren captain because with him, it's an easy, we can duplicate it and put in Harris as well. So let's put in Jaylen Warren. And well, let's put in Harris too, because 31 points a game to the running back position. There's plenty of points for both these guys to benefit. Let's put in Trubisky because he runs too. And if the Pittsburgh offense is focused on running the ball, they're going to get all three of these guys involved in running. Let's put in Pickens or Johnson as our other guy. Let's go for the raw points guy in Michael Pittman. That leaves us with 3,800. That puts us exactly in that spot where we can rotate in these tight ends. Just what we spoke about. I like this build. I think this is an interesting build. You can also swap out Pickens for Diontae Johnson. So let's say we did that. Swap him out for Diontae Johnson. That puts us at 3,400. That leaves us out Kylan Granson, but I'm not worried about that. We can rotate in these tight ends for that last spot. Now, if we put in the swap out Harris into the captain, he's a little bit cheaper. And let's see what that does for us when the salary. We still got that same build. That leaves us with 3,500 in this situation. If we wanted to put in, let's take out Johnson. Let's put in Freiermuth. If we put in Freiermuth, that leaves us with 6,300. That leaves us with Downs. I like that. I like being able to put in Downs. I like being able to put in, let's see, you got both the kickers as options in that situation. We take out Freiermuth, we put in Pickens. That leaves us 3,900. That's in that Granson. I like the range much better when I take out that wideout and I put in Freiermuth. And knowing that Freiermuth has a good matchup. Now, I really like this build because we got the entire running game in there. We got Harris, we got Warren, and we got Trubisky. On top of that, we got Freiermuth. Now, if we're thinking that this is going to be a run central, and these guys are splitting up the runs, maybe it doesn't make sense to have a running back in the captain. What if we put Freiermuth in that captain spot? Okay, so Freiermuth is the one guy that they're letting Trubisky throw to. They're not taking any chances throwing deep against that Colts defense. So the Colts defense is gladly letting them just throw to Freiermuth. Freiermuth is racking up a bunch of PPR points, maybe scores a touchdown or two. So Trubisky is throwing to Freiermuth. Trubisky, Warren, and we'll get Harris back in there. And Harris are racking up the running points. And then you got Pittman. That gives us 7K. We can put Downs in there. And like I said, we could put either of the kickers in there too. So, I honestly, I like where I'm going with this lineup. Having Freiermuth in over one of those wideouts. If you wanted to get one of those wideouts in, maybe we take Harris out and we put in. Let's put in Johnson. Just see where that leaves us. It leaves us with 5,600. That leaves us with the kicker range. I don't hate that either. If we take out Johnson and we put in Pickens, that leaves us in 6K range. Yeah, that's same range with the kickers. So there's all sorts of and defenses, honestly. So there's all sorts of ways that you can go here with a Freiermuth captain or with one of these running backs as a captain. I think I like the options much better than having, like a pricey Michael Pittman or Zack Moss, who I think is overpriced given the matchup this week. So, those are some directions that you can go this week. I'm going to be putting out a show a little bit later with the third game as a game script episode, but I'll also try to get a 3-game show in there to cover the entire 3-game slate for Saturday. I'll probably record that next and get that up before those games start. But hit that like button, looking for 15 so I can put up a shorter video specifically for this game. Make sure to make your deposit on Underdog. Open your account for playoff best ball. Right now, I'm looking at the Buffalo Bills. This is a team that was one of the Super Bowl contenders at the beginning of the year, one of the favorites for winning the Super Bowl. And they hit a bad streak during the season where they are now on the bubble. And Buffalo is a type of team that if you believe in that team and you think that they can overcome the adversity and make it into the playoffs, it's not that much of a stretch to believe that. And if you look at the ADP value in these best ball playoff drafts, you can see that it is easy to stack the Bills. So if you start drafting now, when we got 4 weeks until the playoffs start, if the Bills are able to defeat the Cowboys this week, which is entirely doable, the Cowboys are a team that has lost more than they've won against good teams this season. And Buffalo's playing with their backs against the wall. Let me check real quick. I want to see if they're playing at home or on the road. Because if they're playing at home against Dallas with their season on the line, it's going to be a good situation for Buffalo. Yeah, they're playing at home against the Cowboys. Bills Mafia is going to be out there pulling for the team. It's going to be electric. And if they're able to beat the Cowboys, significantly improves their chances of making it into the playoffs. All of a sudden, you're going to see that ADP spike. So if you have an opportunity to get in on the Bills at a cheap price, I wouldn't go betting the farm on it or anything like that, but get a few lineups in there now where you can get that value on those Bills and open up your account. You see it on the bottom corner of my screen, $100 deposit match on Underdog if you're a first-time depositor and you use the promo code SEEK. So use the promo code SEEK. They're going to match you up to $100 on Underdog. So make sure to check that out. Join me in that value on Buffalo. I want my viewers to benefit from that as well. And, get a few drafts in. I will be doing some strategy shows this week next week with just basically how to play playoff best ball. I've had some success there. I had a top, I think it was like a top 20 finish a couple years ago in the main tournament. And last year I had, a few teams make a nice run. Playoff best ball is my favorite game beyond Showdown to play. And it's all about, just kind of taking advantage of value situations. And I think there's a value to take advantage of now. And I'll get into that with my shows next week. So keep an eye out on those and keep an eye out for the 3-game show that I have coming up. And then keep an eye out for the final game script for the Saturday slate. So good luck, guys. And I will see you in a bit.